job. You had one job.
Will you connect, Heidi? Hi, Heidi. Hi.
Hi, 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 hi.
Then
Oh
Good
my gosh, look,
morning,
your glasses.
Susan.
Amy, your
Hey.
glasses.
yeah, Natalie and I are trying to be twins today. I've
Oh,
Yeah,
awesome.
we did the bang thing. Everybody
yeah,
did the bang
bangs and
thing.
glasses. So just
Here
hope
they
I
come. Good
mean, do you guys think
morning.
that Natalie and I are twins right now? Because I mean, we kind of are. I guess I should have wore some black too, but I didn't. But I didn't.
All right, we're looking good.
Hi, Breeze Honeycutt.
Here they come.
Oh, hey, Lotta Hellberg.
Oh, nice work. Lotta does beautiful work.
I know.
Beautiful work. Very, very good.
Hey.
Are we all here?
You know what I'm hoping for today, Kathy?
Tell me.
Well, last week when we had the Feedback Friday song debacle,
Well,
I
we had to
practiced
sing
all
it
week. I practiced
a
all week.
cappella.
Yeah, I was practicing in case I had to sing it today.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I don't have to sing it. I think I have it right, but
But
so
you can sing it, is what I'm hearing, if in fact
what's
it
that?
doesn't. What you're saying is that you can sing it if it doesn't work.
Kathy, I sing it all the time. And I know many others do as well. So
Oh, Nat, I don't know if we told you, Natalie, but we have like a dancing troupe that does this spontaneous inspirational dance when we do our
I've seen it in the videos.
oh yeah, it's pretty funny. All right.
that my husband
Amy.
was going to be home to sing for you all today live, but that didn't happen. Stuck at work. All right, Kathy, do you want to? I mean, people
I'm
are
taking over, letting people in.
all
Yep.
right. Okay, let's see. Please make this work. Please make this work. Okay.
Please, please, please.
Oh, and everybody should mute themselves too.
Yes, please. Except the Oriole.
Except the Oriole behind me. Yes. Okay. There's beautiful Natalie. And let's go.
Well, it's the end of the week. Now where you been? Well, now it's Feedback Friday, so come on in. Come sit down and stare at your screen. We got a presenter that you never seen. We're Feedback Friday, we're on the loose. We'll be the train, you be the caboose. It's Feedback Friday with Kathy and Amy. Mashed potatoes and the gravy. It's Feedback Friday all day long. Feedback, feedback, Feedback Friday.
And good morning, Suzanne. That was quite inspired. Thank you. This is Feedback Friday. We are looking at episode 55. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kathy Hattori, and Feedback Friday is our weekly show where we speak with dyers, artists, scholars, activists, growers, historians about our favorite topic, which is natural dyes and color. Joining me is Amy Dufaux, who is our Director of Communications and Sustainability, and we're very pleased to welcome you today. We have such a treat today. Joining us is slow fashion pioneer Natalie Chanin. She's the founder and creative director of Alabama Chanin. Natalie was one of the first to look at her local, what we now call a fiber shed, but her local area, and create an economic model using the skills of women in her community to create her amazing pieces. So we have Natalie to thank for thinking about that as a way to create fashion that had more meaning than what was then at that time available. Today we're going to talk about Natalie's design journey, Alabama Chanin's seed to shelf business model, her design process and experience, working with natural dyes, as well as the thoughts on the future of making. Before we start, I just want to tell everybody that you should be muted for the presentation. Amy is going to be our moderator and monitor the chat on the call. And so we'll open up chat at the end of Natalie's presentation, and you can type questions in there. At the very end of the show, we unmute, everybody chats. We also have picture of the week. You're muted.
Week.
We're getting the reverb someday. After who we announce who we saw as a standout this week, and we'll have you unmute to say hello. Before we turn it over to Natalie, I just want to say again, for week 55, thank you very much for all of your support, your enthusiasm, the emails. We've been getting lots of emails, all sorts of questions. Some of these questions we'll try to answer in just a published Feedback Friday blog so that you can get some info that you've been asking about. And that is we're going to have a video copy of this available to you. We'll email that to you and the link, and it is also on the website. And I think that's it. So with no further ado, Natalie, thank you very much for joining us. Welcome to Feedback Friday.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here, and just appreciate everybody showing up. I'm going to attempt now to share my screen. I think we have this ready here. I am just, I'm a bit of a rambler, so I will try to touch on all the things that Kathy mentioned, but I'll try to be short as well so that we can answer questions. And I know that, I think you guys can see that. So that Amy can ask questions, and it can be more of a conversation than me just rambling on here. So as Kathy mentioned, can you hear me? All good? Okay, as Kathy mentioned, I live and work in my hometown, or my community, which is Florence, Alabama, which is north and is west, and as you can go and still be in the state of Alabama. So just a little over 20 years ago, I returned here to start this project of cutting up old t-shirts and sewing them back together again with using patterns and stenciling, like these two images that you see on the screen right now. So we were collecting recycled t-shirts from all over the country, both shopping for them and Goodwills and thrift stores, and also having some of these larger thrift organizations collect these t-shirts and send them to us. And we did that process for about, I guess, 5 to 6 years. We used only recycled materials. And then I was at a conference with Jill Dumaine, who was the director of sustainability at Patagonia at the time. And she mentioned to me that she thought that some organic cotton grown in a proper way, with responsible farmers might be a better solution and have less impact on the planet than some of the recycled work we were doing, just because at that time we were not using natural dyes, and we were shipping these recycled t-shirts back and forth between dye houses across the region of the South from Mississippi to North Carolina. And so in around 2004, 2005, we started working with the Texas Organic Cotton Growers Association for this organic cotton that was grown in Texas, processed in North Carolina, or turned into, yarn and then fabric in North Carolina, and then shipped to us in Alabama for cutting and at the time exclusively hand sewing. And you can see some of the barcodes on the end of these fabric rolls that are under our table currently at the factory. And so these barcodes, it's a system that can help trace fiber all the way back to the farm that it was grown on. So it's a system of accountability that luckily, is highly in use today. And we, it may be slightly imperfect system, but there is a system in place for accountability of tracing these things back. And so, we became widely renowned for these hand-sewn clothing that we make that is sewn by artisans in our own community. So from those very simple recycled t-shirts that you saw in those first slides, 5 to 6 years in, as the skill of our artisans grew and we went from being just a t-shirt company to doing a full collection, you can see that we began creating these very elaborate, multi-layered pieces like these that you see in front of you. So everything from, like these two pieces would be considered couture, and the one on the right being a wedding dress, completely hand sewn, including the seams and the label. And the one on the left, which is what we call Alabama tweeds. So we use these leftover pieces from the cutting of the garments to apply to the top of our garments using all kinds of embroidery techniques that we can talk about a little bit as well. We kind of became very renowned for this technique on the left that we called reverse applique. It's very similar to what like molas and things like that. And someone once said to me, "Isn't it wonderful that you were able to invent reverse applique?" And I said, well, I think it was, potentially invented by the Aztecs, but, hopefully we have been able to use it in a way that felt contemporary and brought this kind of hand sewing that we were doing that was very renowned in my community, the community of my childhood, up to a kind of a modern day system. So this is a fabric that you can see that uses lots of different layers, everything from reverse applique to what would be called traditional, like a whip stitch applique. You can see in the bottom, we use leftover fabrics to do a kind of a couching, which is not really a traditional couching, but our version of couching, and using all kinds of embroidery stitches and glass beads to embellish these, what really is kind of a common fabric, like t-shirts, were the simplest kind of fabric that originally was worn under the clothing, and in the 50s began to be a standout piece on its own that was changed to the outside of the body. So these are just some of the pieces from the collection that you can see. We've done all kinds of collaborations. The picture on the right was a collaboration we did with Burt's Bees Babies, where we made garments from our cuttings. The manufacturing process has a lot of waste, and so we are always trying to bring the company down to as close to zero waste as we can, and finding ways to use the cuttings. We primarily work with that organic cotton that I spoke about, the fiber grown in Texas and processed all the way through to the final garment in the US. So since 2005, we have what we have called seed to shelf system, which is very, especially in 2004, was very rare in America. We use a lean method manufacturing, so we buy those rolls of fabric or produce those rolls of fabric like you saw in an earlier slide, and instead of printing on the fabrics, we use this stenciling technique. So everything is either hand stenciled or painted onto a fabric, and that allows us to produce in very small batches. So, we make a sample collection, and we do have a small store and make a little bit of stock in advance, but very different from the rest of the industry. We are made to order. So if you saw this piece on our website, we would make it for you at that time. This particular piece uses a very beautiful woven fabric that was produced by Sally Fox. So this is brown grown cotton. This was one of our first attempts of mixing woven fabric in with our knit fabrics. And we were very lucky to be able to get to work with Sally, who of course is a heroine of mine, as is Kathy Hattori. So in 2013, our building is in the industrial park of Northwest Alabama, Lauderdale County, our county here. And this county was once known, beginning in the 70s, as the t-shirt capital of the world. So more t-shirts were made here than any place else in America. And, you know, I was a teenager during this time and not really paying attention. So it was much later, after I came home, I realized that a lot of the recycled t-shirts that I was purchasing from all over the country had actually been made in my own community. So it was this incredible thing of coming home and realizing that the t-shirts were also coming home. And so in 2013, we opened a machine manufacturing division. In this particular photo, you can see a combination of the hand-sewn apron on top of a machine-sewn t-shirt and skirt that we now make in our facility with our organic cotton jerseys. So we're using the same fabrics for hand and machine. And, you know, I do have to say that when I was making solely handmade garments, I was a little bit of a snob about, you know, the hand process and everything. You know, I really thought it was better made by hand. And then after we opened our machine manufacturing division, I realized that machine made goods are also made by hand, and that it's almost as, it is equally as hard to do this machine work beautifully and sustainably as it is to do the hand work beautifully and sustainably. And so since 2013, we've been working really diligently to try to recreate textile manufacturing in our region and what that could look like in a modern way, and how to combine these very elaborate hand embroidered fabric like this one that you see is a version of that tweed that we saw early on in the pictures, just a detail of that. And so how to marry the hand artisan with the machine artisan. And, you know, over the years, we've looked for projects that use both things together. And so a lot of our work for the last 20 years has been really you know, trying to figure out how to get those machines working again, how to have, you know, mechanics that can work on those machines, how to build systems that artisans can work by, do this work by hand in their own homes, you know, kind of reinventing what would have originally been called a kind of cottage industry system to bring it up to the standards of the Department of Labor and U.S. federal standards for workers. And so, yeah, that's been a lot of the work that I've done. As Kathy knows, unfortunately, a lot of our dyeing has not been natural dye, but we were very lucky to just work on a collaboration with Amy and Kathy and Botanical Colors. And this top that you see here is a madder dyed garment that we produced in our factory in Alabama. We sent to Kathy, and this collaboration launched today on our website. So I'm really excited to talk about this. And I think, you know, there's a lot of talk these days about circular design and how to, you know, it was recently called out to me, you know, I think of us as being, you know, proudly, it's not just me, our entire team, but you know, we've been working for a really long time on how to be the best sustainable company we can be. And someone said to us, you know, it's not enough to be seed to shelf. You have to be, you know, seed back to the soil. And so, you know, while we've chosen dyes that we feel have less impact on the environment, it would be wonderful for the next stages of this journey for it to be, you know, a completely natural dye process that, you know, that enhances the soil. So here you can see these beautiful pieces that we did in collaboration, and I hope you'll jump over to our website, alabamachanin.com, to have a look at these pieces today. Thank you, Kathy. We're really proud of them and very excited. They're very beautiful and very soft, and definitely an enhancement to our own machine sewn styles. So you know, I'm going to jump back a bit in time, because the company also early on, we were trying to teach our artisans were actually teaching us how we could expand our systems of embroidery and that sort of thing. And so, we had to really develop some standards around our hand sewing techniques. And we realized that a lot of the techniques that we were using were kind of dying in our community. And it seemed like these hand sewing skills were dying across the nation and across the globe. And so in 2006, I started writing a book, and today we have 5 books. This book on the screen now, The Geometry of Hand Sewing, being the 5th book that we did, to kind of preserve these hand sewing techniques and to, I'm going to call it open source the techniques that we were using. Because as I mentioned before, I did not invent these embroidery, stitches or the technique of reverse applique or applique. I just hope that we made it contemporary in a way that was unique to us. And so, we started open sourcing our fabrics. We started open sourcing how we were doing things. And so today we have a part of our organization that's called the School of Making. These swatches that you see are part of the techniques that we open source to crafters around the globe. We have a little program this year called Swatch of the Month, where we send out swatches and have collaborations with all kinds of different makers. From the bird that you saw previously was a collaboration with our friend Roseanne Cash. This particular swatch is a stripe that was from the book. So that's sort of a bird's eye view of our company. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope you have some questions. And I think this was around 15 minutes, so I'm sorry if it was too short or too long, but I think this is, we kind of made it to the end. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. Gives us plenty of time to chat.
Wow.
That'll be great. Thank you.
You're
Wow. That tweed is just mind-boggling how beautiful it is. Do you still actually do that patterning?
Yes, it's definitely part of, we have a few things that have just become sort of standard. Everybody always wants it, and that tweed is one of the things that that you see over and over again. In 2005, it occurred to me that so we do all these very elaborate developments like that tweed. It's very time consuming, to design stencils and to develop all the embroidery techniques and this sort of thing. And so in 2005, it occurred to me that we were, in the same way that we were making, as the rise of fast fashion, not only were we throwing away clothes, but we were also throwing away ideas. So ideas are living things that take a long time to develop. And so what we did was we started making all of our developments and our swatches in a standard size. So we cut these swatches at 10 by 16 inches. It just was like random. It fit into a 3-ring binder. It was kind of, it wasn't any rocket science around it, but and so we started archiving every pattern that we made. And so today we have probably 70 books of swatches, just stacks and stacks of swatches in different colors and different patterns. And that tweed is one that just always comes forward, because it was our way of turning this really simple, or what, some people would think of as an underwear fabric, cotton jersey, into this very elevated pattern, a traditional textile pattern. So
super beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm going to let Amy, it looks like you might have some questions in chat.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, take it away.
Yeah, okay. So Natalie, thanks. Do you still have people working for you that have been with you since the beginning? is one of the...
Yes. So a very lovely woman, her name is April Morgan. She was actually, when I first came home in 2000, I ran just a tiny little ad in the newspaper that said part-time hand sewing and quilting. And she was the very first person to answer the ad and come to the house where I was doing this work. And she tells this funny story. I mean, the house had been abandoned for 5 years, and we literally had, I don't know if you guys know about privet hedge in the South, but privet, is considered like an escaped exotic, and it just takes over down here. And so this house had been empty for several years, and the privet hedge had just grown up around it. And so we literally like cut a doorway in with a chainsaw to get the privet out that we could get in and out of the house. And April said she pulled up in the back in front of that door, and she was like, I'm not sure if I should go in there. But she pulled me over yesterday in the parking lot to say, I told you that we were going to be here in 20 years, and you tell me there's no way that we'll still be there. And I was like, you were right, April Morgan.
Yeah.
I always accuse her of praying it into existence. She's like, I just prayed and prayed that you would get orders and we could keep doing this. And she's still sewing 20 years later.
Yeah, you've always kept things really fresh with what you do. I mean, I've been following you since the beginning, really, and you have always just done your partnerships, kind of different things you've done with your company. But also, the second part of that question was, if things had changed. I know when you first kind of started out, there was kind of people would come to work, but they were also doing work from home, so you could help maybe moms that have kids and stuff. But has that changed at all?
Not really. It's pretty much exactly the same program now as it was then, with the addition of the machine made area. Obviously, those people who work as machine artisans have to work in our building because, it's kind of hard to move those into because like the shirt that I have on right now, and some of the pieces that we made for our collaboration, Kathy, they can require up to 5 or 6 machines for different operations. So it's very it's not financially feasible, or like just from the architecture of space to have those in many different locations. So those people do work in the building, but our artisans still work as independent contractors from their own homes. And, we were just talking about this yesterday, in fact, about how this way of work is very conducive for women because, women are still, and we do see this in our, just the social structure of the way we work. Women are still raising kids. They're still doing elder care. They're still, the primary caregivers of the family. And so we do have a lot of fluctuations sometimes around this. Like if a parent gets sick, it's oftentimes in our region, it's the woman who stops work to take care of a parent or something like that. And so this kind of work is very conducive to women's lives because they can, sew wherever they want to sew. Their office or their workplace can be, in a car, in a school parking lot. It can be, at a soccer game. It can be in a hospital. And so, over the years, there's been a lot of really great stories about that, how it has empowered women to put their kids through school or buy a car or take a vacation with their family or just put food on the table,
Yeah. Let's see. Elena Phipps is asking, can you tell us about your own textile background and how you came into this field?
Yeah, I always credit my grandmothers with this. I'm a child of the 60s, and we were from the county, so I kind of grew up out in the country, and both my grandparents had farms. And I think that was very common at that time. Even if you had a job, like my mother's father was a scientist and worked for TVA, but they had a home farm where they had a garden and, cows and chickens and all those kinds of things. And, my grandmother made all the clothes for her children. I mean, both of my grandmothers did. And so I was writing about it the other day that, it was just this way like it just felt so normal for people to be able to make anything. And so I think I didn't really grow up knowing that there was a job like as a designer, but I saw my grandmother's working, she would envision this dress or something, and she would take me to the fabric store and say, which buttons do you want to put on it? So there was just like a lot of freedom to make these choices. And so I was already, I think I didn't know it, but I was working as a designer with my grandmothers. It just seems so normal to, I don't know, bake bread and have it for dinner and just all of these things. And so I was very, very lucky to grow up in that environment. And so those are my first textile memories were, things my grandmother made. And then after that, I was very, very lucky to land in North Carolina. And I got this kind of incredible Bauhaus training at North Carolina State University. And I did a double major in design and textiles. So there's a textile school there as well, because North Carolina was like this region. There were a lot of textile companies in that area. And so, this design school that I went to was also very influenced by Black Mountain College and the Bauhaus people who had moved there. So the program that I did was a double major, as I mentioned, in design and textile design, is today called the Annie Albers program. So, there was a lot of inspiration from that. Maybe
awesome.
that shines through.
Yeah.
Or hopefully it shines through in the work.
NC State is such a great school. I mean, like most
yeah,
innovative.
I'm very, very grateful to the
Yeah.
school and my professors there.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, I guess tacking on to talking about being a designer, Suzanne's asking, are the artisans you work with the designers, or how does the design of the clothing come about?
I mean, the design really comes from myself, and we do have a design team that works on that. And that's not to say that the artisans haven't influenced that, especially early on. We found ourselves kind of documenting different kinds of techniques, so there were things like chicken scratch that I had never heard of. And that's one of the designs now in the School of Making that we teach. This very old, it's just a way of using threads, and it looks like a chicken's foot put onto the fabric. And so that design was influenced by an artisan who had learned that from her grandmother and brought it and taught it to us. So, I do think of design as a very symbiotic relationship between all of us. Like, even in the machine made division, like we have particular machines that are set up in a way. And so I can sketch all I want to, but if it can't be made or produced by one of those machines, then it doesn't make any sense. And so our machine artisans will come up with solutions like, oh, this could be a better solution for that. And so I think it's just a constant conversation between, idea, production, design. It just goes back and forth until you get, what you feel is the best possible version of a particular thing.
Mm-hmm. I love that. As I'm like looking through the questions, people are asking for what is the emoji for Natalie is a goddess, and I'm like,
I don't know about that, but thank you. I needed to hear that today. Thank you.
All right. Okay. I love what you do. Beautifully inspiring. What are the main challenges, if any, you face hand sewing garments? And are you planning to run online workshops soon?
Yeah, that's great. I forgot to talk about the workshops. So we have been doing online Zoom workshops. We started that, I guess, about 6 months ago. And we have some of those listed on our website. And we do, we've started back with in-person workshops. We've had a few and they've gone really well. We're lucky enough in the building that we're in, we have a lot of space. And so we're able to, really spread things out and keep people safe in that area. So yes to all of the above. And the first part of that question, I think I missed that, but.
If any challenges that you face hand sewing garments?
Yeah, I mean, price is, is a huge question. You can go on our website and like that tweed jacket, we can't sew it. We can't sell it for less than $8,000. It just, there's some pieces that take, one woman a month to make, and they're expensive. It's just the way it is. And, I always say we're not down here making a fortune. I know people think if you sell an $8,000 jacket that you're rich, but it's just very time consuming, and you don't even, I think a lot of people, and we've tried to be transparent about this. I think, we could do that better. We could, I'm sure there's ways that we can, I'm sure that we could, do our jobs better. But, it's those of you who've worked in our style. I mean, this is kind of how the School of Making developed. So I'm going to answer it with like 1,000 word answer. So here we go. When when I first wrote that first book was Alabama Stitch book, and it came about as I was kind of angry because I had written this kind of hand sewn book to document our standards for how we did reverse applique, for example. And so when I agreed to do this book, I had been on a, you have to think back, like in 2000, it was at the very beginning of the internet, right? The internet was just kind of finding its, it was just kind of gaining steam. And I was on some kind of like a message board or something. And I read something one night about how our clothes were very elitist. And I was thinking, I was so mad because I could barely pay myself to eat. I was, living on County Road, on the side of County Road 200. I was living in the production office. I was spending my nights like in the basement, taking pockets off of recycled t-shirts and washing them and cutting them apart and sewing back together. And I was like, this is the antithesis of elitism. But the price was definitely, a barrier. So when someone reached out, I was hooked up with Abrams to do this book about our sewing methods. I was like, you know what? I mean, people are copying it already. I'm, being called elitist. I'm just going to write this book. I'm going to open source what we're doing. It was also the time of Napster for those old people here, when we were thinking about outsourcing music. There was a Wired magazine that I subscribed to Wired at that time, and there was a whole issue on open source. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to open source this and send it out. And a lot of people in the industry said, "Oh, well, you've put your own nail in the coffin because everybody's just going to copy you." And I was like, you know what? They're copying it anyway, so I'm just going to do this. So when the book came out, and folks started to get it, they were like, oh, this is kind of hard. This is kind of time consuming. And now I understand not why your items cost so much, but why they're worth so much. And then, people started saying, oh, this is kind of hard. And, to get all the recycled materials together, couldn't you just start open sourcing your fabric as well? And so we started doing that. And then, we started getting emails or phone calls like, oh, it's kind of hard to cut it out and stencil it. Like, could you just, cut it out and stencil it for us, and then we could sew it. And so we started doing that. And that's really how the School of Making developed. And so all that to say, in price, like if you've ever done hand sewing and the barriers to price. If you've ever done one of our pieces, you'll know, like, to do it from start to finish with fabric and sewing and all of that, like, you probably wouldn't sell it for what we sell it for. And we do hear that all the time. Like, I would never sell this for $1,000. I've been working on it for 2 years. So we hear things like that in the School of Making a lot. So, but they are also very symbiotic. They make a lot of sense because, it puts organic cotton in more people's hands. And yeah. Anyway.
And I know for sure that there's definitely many women that are here that I know are wearing like their Natalie Chanin, their Alabama Chanin skirts and blazers, and But are you still making kits?
We do,
I
yes.
know
We
you have the
still,
patterns in the book because I've got all your books, but there's
yeah.
patterns in there, I think.
We have about 32 patterns now, I think, around that. And then we've also just done some tutorials on the journal about how to use other people's patterns using our fabrics and techniques. So we encourage, take any pattern and do what we do, because, there's so many great patterns out there, both new and vintage. I think there's so much great work out there to combine. And then we do our workshops, and we've started virtual workshops, and we have Swatch of the Month, which is a great program. And if you've never worked in this way, it's really fun way to get started. And as I mentioned, we have collaborations, and so there's always like little goodies and things like that in the boxes. So it's fun to get that box each month. And yeah.
All right, let's see. Can you please explain the tweed more specifically? And they were asking to show a photo again, but maybe just talk about the tweed.
It's just multiple layers of fabrics that have been appliqued over one another, and like you would think of tweed, like a tweed, there's kind of verticals and horizontals, and we use it. The fabric is, that one was tea dyed, so it was locally dyed. It was cut, then stenciled, so it actually has some stripes in it. And then it has, all different kinds of embroidery, couching to get that, cross hatch kind of look. And then it has additional beading, and then embroideries like eyelets and things like that on top of it. So it's a pretty multi-leveled process there. But you can play with it.
Yeah. All right. Like sometimes
it's simple.
Did you just bless us all?
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. I like that sometimes people send me questions thinking they're putting it in the general chat, but they're sending it just to me. But somebody just mentioned, where did Natalie get her glasses?
Well, I'm embarrassed to say, but they're Warby Parkers. I'm not embarrassed to say they're not. I don't think it's particularly sustainable, but I love them.
Let's see. I like. Let's see. Okay, will you have new fabric colors available for the School of Making? The lilac was so beautiful, but is no longer available.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we definitely are thinking about additional colors. I'm gonna just drop a bomb here. There is some issue with the supply chain for organic cotton this year. Unfortunately, the Texas farmers have had a couple of the bad years just from a weather perspective. And so the cotton has a very short staple length. And so you are going to see a dearth of organic cotton, US grown cotton, in the next year. And so we're working on that right now, trying to figure out how to get through this time. And so, yes, the idea is yes, but it's also a little bit, Mother Nature is having her way with us as well. So we're just trying to balance Mother Nature with supporting the Texas farmers and trying to figure out, there's a long staple cotton fiber from California called Subpima. It's a Pima cotton, but is kind of branded that it is a US fiber. So it's grown in several states across the country, but is not organic. And so you're going to be seeing us supplement some of our colors with Subpima. And so we'll have some organic cotton that is what we have been carrying for the last, 15 years. And then you'll see some new Supima, most likely in some new colors and whatnot. But we're going to be talking a lot about that in the coming months on our journal. It's about the cotton supply chain.
Sorry about that. I've got this Oriole that's going crazy, so I keep muting myself, and all of a sudden I just realized I was talking to you and you couldn't hear me. But so Natalie, when you like after this is over and you watch this video, I mean, there's so many people saying about how much you inspired them to do what they do. They're just kind of more, just lots of comments about how inspiring you've been to them as makers.
Thank you.
Please read back over the chat will be attached to the video, and you can just skim through it. Let's see. Could you talk a little bit about what has been previously challenging about using natural dyes, or what prevents them from being used in the clothing industry in general?
Well, I'd love to have this as a conversation with you guys too, because I did a lot of dyeing in college, but I am not a natural dye expert. And so I have to rely on the experts. But a part of the challenge, I think, and Kathy, I'd love to hear what you have to say about this, is that, our current demand, we're kind of in the middle. Like, we're not a giant company, but we're not a tiny company anymore either. And so we require about 24,000 yards of fabric a year to do the work that we do. And there are not currently any options for dyeing large quantities like that in the US, the fabric that we use with natural dyes. Is that correct? Is that really true?
Way correct. Yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar with industry, and Natalie, you're really familiar with this, is that there's very specific machinery to what kind of fiber and what kind of fabric construction you use. So if you're working in knits, you can't really dye it on the same machinery that you use to dye wovens. So it's quite, the industry is extremely specific, and because natural dyes are more expensive and they're not generally very well understood, then it's difficult for people to begin to understand like how you might implement that. And so that's kind of what we've been spending the last 10 years doing, is just really working with brands and retailers on where can you go with what you want to do with what we have today. And Natalie, your company specifically is all US focused, right? So you get US fibers, you do US manufacturing. And so the US textile processing industry is just a fraction of what it was 40 years ago. And so almost all of that expertise and all of the facilities are now overseas. So we actually work as much overseas as we do within the US now.
Yeah. Dyeing in general has been a huge issue over the years. It's probably been one of the most challenging things. When I started in 2000, there were still probably 15, 20 dye houses in our region. Now, I'm not saying that they were sustainably focused, but there were dye houses and people working in them, and just one by one they closed. And now there's,
one or two.
And a few are coming back, and we like to support them. And so I don't know, it's just it's supply chain and manufacturing processes is really, like, once it leaves, it's very difficult to rebuild it, right? And so that's why I'm so proud of this collaboration that we've done. And it's exciting. This morning people started shopping it straight away, so I was like, yeah, we'll get to do more.
Yeah, exactly.
So if I had one, that is one of the challenges. It is more expensive, and we've talked about it recently, like the pieces that we dye by the yard are very consistent, and the hand dye has this beautiful variation in it. And, it's soft, and it's amazing, but it's more expensive. And so we need people to support that and, be willing to, we always talk about price per wear, like, add up you know, what your, how many times you wear your favorite piece and divide it by what it costs, and you find out, you know, if you buy something that will last a very long time, that it's actually so much less expensive than something that falls apart quickly, or that you know, throw away after a few uses. But you know, I mean, and Kathy's right. You know, indigo has been used on a very large scale, like for dyeing denim, but it's a completely different fabric. So it uses different machineries, and the most of our knits, I believe I'm right about this, Kathy, but you can help me, uses a cold process dye, which is, you know, it's not perfect, but it has less.
The fiber reactives, yes.
Yeah, it has it doesn't really use heavy metals in the process. So,
but lots of salt. That's the only part.
Yeah, I was about to say the worst part of it is removing the salt from the water, so it doesn't go into the ecosystem. And I guess there are also some acrylics. Some of the cold process fiber reactive could
be in the finishing
acrylic bases to them. So there could be some things like this. And
I mean, I think people should be aware that the way that when you walk into a commercial conventional fabric store and you see perfectly even bolts of plain fabric, it's because they put all this stuff on that fabric in order for the dye just to completely evenly attach. It's I mean, yes, of course you get a higher, I would say, level of evenness when you're working with a huge industrial facility that's all they do, but they also use all these assists that they don't have to tell you any of those. And in the, you know, the natural dye process, because it's so much simpler, we do see the variation because we don't use those products.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So,
well, I think that's a goal for us, to get to that seed to soil, you know,
back to soil.
It's going to take a younger generation coming in and figuring, you know, using their brilliant minds to figure that out, and how to rebuild the supply chain in America and globally in a sustainable way, right?
But there are initiatives out there. I mean, if you just start looking around, you'll start seeing that people are beginning to really focus on, is it possible to do certain types of growing that we've never done here before to scale. So that's kind of exciting to see that those questions are being asked. Because even 5 years ago, no one was asking those questions.
And so with a company like ours that's really been focused on regional economics, you know, that was kind of our commitment from the beginning, was to stay here, to build jobs, to keep the work there, to try to rebuild the textile industry that we could in this region, you know, and then to connect with you and other people to connect it. So we have to work from the outside in my opinion, you know, and just keep working towards one another. And eventually this unbroken supply chain and seed to soil will exist, right? I mean, we're so much further along today than we were 15 years ago.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks to a lot of smart people like you.
Oh, including yourself, Miss Natalie, for sure.
All right, let's see. I just went to the alabamachanin.com site and just put all the different pieces in the chat that you guys.
Oh, good. Yeah, these are some of our most beloved. We chose our most beloved styles from the machine made division for the collaboration. So I've got mine. I'm excited. I should have worn them today.
I wore your Natalie Chanin the t-shirt necklace. That I think it's on Creative Bug. I've been sending everybody there on how to make a t-shirt necklace with your cutting up your t-shirts. But
yeah, put that link in there. You can get it from our website too. And that is, you should tell them the story about that shirt. It's about the shirt you used to make it. So that's such a beautiful story.
Oh gosh. Well, it's a tender day for me here, so I'll try. I can tell the story. Yeah. When so my good friend Breeze Honeycutt, who's here, told me about how to make this necklace, the Natalie necklace is what we call it. But yeah, my father passed December 1st, and my mother gave me all his white t-shirts because she thought I would enjoy using those for natural dyeing. Double like play on that. So I cut my dad's t-shirts up and I dyed them in different strips and made these t-shirt necklaces so I could keep my dad close with me.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just nice. And now I have lots of different colors, and it's very meditative to be able to make the knots and make the necklaces. So I will, before this is over, I'm going to quickly go dig out the Creative Bug Alabama Chanin necklace.
Thank you for telling that, Amy.
Oh yeah.
It's textiles have such memory, and I noticed someone asked about Project Threadways, and that is, part of where that started, not only, for ourselves, but for our region. So our region, is steeped in textiles and has a lot of very ugly parts and some very beautiful parts of that. And so Project Threadways was a way, to begin to document these stories and compile the histories. And there's so much to talk about from that, but you can, go to the website. We do symposiums every year, and next year the symposium in April is about textiles and activism, but this last one in April was about textiles through time and place. And so, there's just so much to say about it. Like, we're in an old factory building from, like, as I mentioned, that came from the 70s and 80s. And so much of that time wasn't documented because at some point in American history, we stopped thinking, of factory work as being important or valuable. And so a lot of the information around, just wasn't saved. And so we're going back and trying to document some of that time and save some of those stories. So we've collected oral histories. We're working with scholars to find ways to tell the story in the community as well. And it's a great organization, inspired by the Southern Foodways Alliance and the Center for the Study of Southern Culture at the University of Mississippi, which is where all of these oral histories will be housed in the library there and available to scholars globally. So sign up for our newsletter and join our symposium next year.
Natalie, I just put the Natalie necklace link in the chat. And there's so many questions that we're not going to get to, but I will put your virtual workshops in the video post, which I actually have everything ready to go today. I just have to hit publish so you can all.
Cool.
You're a badass goddess yourself.
What's that?
Because you're a badass goddess yourself.
Well,
absolutely.
Yeah,
excellent.
There's lots of stories to still tell, but Natalie and I have known each other for at least probably a decade now, and I remember when I was the editor of a website called Eco-Salon, and Natalie was writing some stories for Eco-Salon. But there was a really great story that you had about your skating fee and how to weigh out work.
Oh yeah,
you made me tell a story. Now you have to tell your story quick. What maybe your skating fee story, and because that's one to keep on with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of at the beginning of the company. So my the original company closed and I opened a new company, which became Alabama Chanin, and I was the single owner of that. And I also had a child right at the same time. I have a late life child who's I had when I was 44. And I was, you get so many requests to like go and speak here and do this, and all these things seem so important, for building your business. But I was standing in Los Angeles, and I was doing this lecture and it was lovely and wonderful, but if you added up all the time I was making that I had spent on getting there and doing the presentation and all that, I was probably getting about $1 an hour. And you know, and my daughter was with some family members and they sent a picture and she was ice skating for the first time and she had this little beautiful dress on and the ice skates, and I was like, I will never miss her first, I have to charge from this day forward, I will charge an ice skating fee. So if I'm, going to go and do something, it has to prove, valuable enough that it like helps pay for her college, or it does something that I'm there for the first time that she ice skates. And it really changed the way I thought about my time and my family and how to put value on the work that I do. And so I wound up doing a lot less items. But the funny thing is that, some people understood and were willing to pay that. And then I did put that aside for her future, So anyway, that's my ice skating fee.
Yeah, that is so, so important.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to be inclusive, but then you're also trying not to get like run over by just this tidal wave of requests.
Yeah.
Natalie, thank you so, so much. This was really so wonderful, nourishing, informative, beautiful work.
Well, I love you guys, and I'm
Huge
so
fans. We love you
excited about
too.
our collaboration.
Yeah, we're very
I hope we get to
excited.
do lots more. I'm already
Yes.
thinking about what color comes next.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you, Natalie.
Stories on Eco-Salon.
Yeah.
I just found them on Eco-Salon.
I know they're still there. I was so proud of those.
They're so good.
Excellent. All right. Well, before everybody runs away, let me just close out. We're going to also do picture of the week. And then there's the after party with Amy, which she controls. So we'll do that. But just a few announcements and reminders. So we decided to kind of do this thing here in August, and the response has been kind of like overwhelming, but we're still going to try to figure out how to do it. So that's going to be, I don't even know what the date's, third week of August. We're going to have a little community indigo dip, a pop-up for people to sell. So if you are a user or creator that uses botanical colors products, we'd love to hear from you. We're hoping that we can get some Pacific Northwest folks here to do that, to showcase them. And you'll email Amy, and Amy will put her email in the chat. We still have the beautiful chambray linen kala cotton from India that we got from 1111. And I just wanted to say that 1111 on their website is also donating 100% of all their proceeds this month to COVID relief. They've been in lockdown for over 4 weeks. Of course, they have this enormous network of village producers that are now isolated. They've been putting together medical kits. So if you are inclined and interested in 1111 fashion, I believe it's 11.11.us is their website. We've got their fabrics and we've just placed a reorder with them as well. Any of you who are interested in Abu Bakar's Mineral Mud workshop in July, we're still accepting applications for scholarship requests. So don't be shy. Please apply if you have any interest. We would love to have you join us. And next week, we're going to be talking with Liz Spencer, the Dogwood Dyer. Liz is a dear friend, exceptional artist, and she's going to be talking about the evolution and adaptation of her natural dye practice, as she's the mother of 3 young children, and how to balance the insatiable thirst for deeper understanding and also care for others. And we're so excited to have her. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy to do picture of the week.
Week.
And then we'll unmute to say hello and goodbye.
And just as a side note, Kathy will not be here next week. Sweet Mother of Venus.
Gonna go see Mom.
Yep.
Haven't seen my mom in 16 months.
You got to go, Kathy, go. Yeah, so I will be I'm going to dress like Kathy and try to fool you all. I will be joined by Reese Honeycutt, who, yep, you can clap, Heidi. So we'll be together with the Dogwood Dyer, who's a very good friend of ours. All right, let's see. It's time for picture of the week. So Corey Jean, unmute yourself. Where are you?
Natalie, you got to see this quilt.
Yeah, wait till you see this quilt, Natalie. Where are
Hi.
you? Keep talking.
Am I here?
There you are. Okay.
Hi.
Spotlight Corey Kingsley.
Hello.
Okay, well, Corey gets our picture of the week because, first of all, let me share the screen here. And Corey, thanks for quickly putting it up on Instagram.
Oh, thanks for the incentive.
So this is Corey's first quilt. What are you even talking about? This is your first quilt. And Kathy and I were wondering, is she on the moon? Is she on Mars? Where is she? You can talk about your quilt, and I will go back and forth showing the front and the back, but we're just in awe that this is your first quilt.
Well, the background is a really gorgeous place called the Painted Hills in Central Oregon. And that different type of sand and clay, very Mars looking area, is just a different type of soil throughout the years. But yeah, it was my first time visiting there, and I needed an opportunity to photograph this quilt, which I made for my niece, who was just born. So she'll have it for a long time since it's very large, but yeah, it's, I just picked up sewing. I picked up my first sewing machine about a year ago during quarantine. I really needed a distraction, and I was becoming very inspired by some quilts that I saw online. And I knew that quilting just needed a straight stitch, so it didn't seem too intimidating. But I have been working on it for at least a year now. And I purchased a lot of the dye stuff from Botanical Colors and used a lot of the informational stuff on the website for, I think it's Michelle Garcia's 123 Indigo VAD. And it was just super informational to go on Botanical Colors and teach myself how to do it. And I became very obsessed with it. It's been a lot of fun.
Besides the indigo, what were some of the other dyes that you use on the front?
I used logwood, marigold, madder, cochineal. I used some yellow onion skins. I used avocado stones and skins. I used cottage. So yeah, and indigo. So I just a variety of things. And then I was also inspired, it's a 9-patch quilt, but I actually got the tutorial from a woman called, I think her name is Sarah, but she goes by Farm and Folk on Instagram. And her quilts are really beautiful and inspiring. So I used her tutorial as well. So yeah, it was very helpful to find that information online, and I hope to make more. But yeah.
Thanks, Corey. And so it's corey.jean on Instagram. But if you guys, can you guys see this if I click over? Can you see that right now?
Oh yeah.
And that's Corey's website, because being her first quilt, this is her other life that she's got really beautiful work on here. So CoreyJeanKingsley.com. Go check it out.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can now unmute.
Yeah.
And say hello, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Natalie, again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Heidi.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have
a safe trip, Kathy. Bye, Amy.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right, Amy, I'm going to make
No,
you
Kathy,
host.
I swear to God, can you send me that Norin behind you so I can put it up?
No, ma'am. No, no, ma'am.
Okay. I mean, I also will be in Maine next week, so I'm not even going to have the backdrop of my kitchen. I'm going to have to whittle something exciting together.
Quickly.
Whittle.
Whittle.
I can take my glasses off now because Natalie and I don't have to be twins anymore.
Oh, and Amy, you can stop the recording whenever you would like.
Oh, great. Yeah, I'll stop it. That's
Okay.
perfect
All right,
time.
I'm running away.